I have spent years researching Ernest Hemingway and specifically which fountain pens he used and his writing process. Today, we're going to delve even deeper. We're going to look at some first-hand sources, some of his personal correspondences, and see what that reveals about which fountain pens he used, his writing style, his ink choice, and a few other surprises along the way. So join me, won't you, as I dive into this rabbit hole and go even deeper into Ernest Hemingway and which fountain pens he used. Let's start this off strong by solving one of the enduring mysteries of the Ernest Hemingway Stub Pen. Now, this is from a letter that was written on July 13th, 1916, which was a Thursday because he says so here. And let me read this to you. He says, "This is a horrible stub pen, but there's only one other in camp and it's worse. So I hope you can translate these hieroglyphics." And it says reformed spelling, so I think he knows that he spelled that word wrong. And then it says in parentheses, "This is the other pen from now on." This is written to his friend Emily from the camp at the Windmere on Walloon Lake, Michigan. Now, the question always was, is he saying it's a stub nib pen or stub point, as they would have said in those days? Or is he referring to sort of a stubby pen, a small pen that maybe didn't fit into his hands? Well, I reached out to the good folks at the JFK Library where most of his correspondences are held, and they were very kind to send me a scan. Now, sadly, I cannot share that with you because it is unpublished and still under copyright. But what I can do is settle this question and show you in my hand what it looks like. And to me, it certainly looks like what he was doing was writing with a stub nib pen and being very disciplined and using part of the nib to write as uniform as he could. He didn't seem to like line variation at this point in his life. And you can see him struggling, but some of the cross strokes are coming across as a bit wide, a bit messy, especially when he signs his name, which is what you would expect, because if you're trying to be very disciplined, but then you sign your name, I mean, the one time when we're all a little bit unhinged with our penmanship is when we're signing our names. So I think clearly this reveals that this was some sort of stub nib early fountain pen from 1916 or so. Pretty fascinating stuff, and thank you to the JFK Library for settling this by sending me a scan of this unpublished letter. Another interesting comment about that letter is, like so many of us, he starts off very uniform and very linear. You can certainly see that he's struggling with the pen. But what seems to happen as he gets to about the middle of the page is that it's all getting a bit lopsided, and the right side of the page starts to dip, and then this only seems to accelerate by the time he gets to page 2. And then, of course, there's that slightly unhinged signature that we would expect with trying to use a pen that you don't feel very comfortable with. So very fascinating stuff. As you get actual physical copies of these letters, they just reveal so much. So this is one of the most interesting and precise mentions of a fountain pen in all of Ernest Hemingway's correspondences, and it opens up another mystery, as it often does. This I'm reading from Ernest Hemingway's Selected Letters from Carlos Baker. Really good book. He did a great job at curating some of his more interesting letters. So this particular letter is to Isabella Simmons Godolphin. It was written on February 25th, 1926. So we're looking at a 27-year-old Ernest Hemingway. He would have already been living in Paris for a while. His writing career is underway. He's writing his next next door neighbor from his childhood home in Oak Park, Illinois. And it's a very affectionate letter. He calls Isabel Is, which is really nice. He gets to the end, he signs his name Ernest, crosses that out and writes Ernie. So maybe that's how his friends, or at least his childhood friends, referred to him. So all that is fine. Then we get to the postscript. And postscript is kind of fun. It says, I never did succeed in writing my family, nor in cabling. So just deny any rumors that I was in New York. It was some imposter. I mean, we've all ducked our families from time to time, right? This is the really interesting part. I left a grand gold mounted Waterman fountain pen, large size, in my room, number 344 at the Brevoort. I wonder if you could go over and get it, and maybe send it by Hammy before they padlocked the Brevoort. Also, I may have left other things I hadn't had the courage to look yet. The pen, this is really interesting. The pen has a gold band around the part of the cap that screws down. It is a self-filler and has a very hard, sharp point. Is double-sized barrel. I know I left it, so you might be very nasty to them if they say they haven't got it. Best always, and thanks a lot, Ernie. So this is really interesting because now we know that he had a very specific Waterman fountain pen in the mid-1920s that had a gold cap band on the cap right about where it screws into the barrel. I have yet to pin down this exact model. The fact that he calls it grand makes me feel like it's pretty large. Grand can mean large. The fact that he calls it a gold band around the cap would make you think that the rest of the pen isn't gold. So it could possibly be, and probably is, a black ebonite pen with a very thick gold band around where the cap is. So that's what I'm thinking. Now, this is the mystery, and this is where I'm left. Was the pen ever returned to him? I've been trying to track down some kind of correspondence back, some kind of confirmation of this, but I am so far unsuccessful. So this is another question that's lingering out there. Did he get his grand gold Waterman pen that he left at the Brevoort in New York? I don't know, but I hope one day soon to solve this mystery too. This Waterman pen was a gift to Ernest from his then wife, Pauline Pfeiffer. So there's a question of which Waterman fountain pen it was, but there's some other questions here too. Now, part of this is generational, but if you noticed, he says that this Waterman fountain pen had a very hard, sharp point. Now, that's a bit surprising because hard is one of the last things you would think from a Waterman fountain pen of the 1920s. I mean, certainly there were some, but you would expect it to have a flexible ideal number 2 nib, but I guess that wasn't his preference. We already know he doesn't like writing with stub nibs. The other thing that's really fascinating to me is the fact that it's not called a nib in those days. It was called a point. And when I was coming up in fountain pens, it was always point. What size point do you want? And you're seeing that less and less. That's one thing I've noticed over the 30 or so years I've been in fountain pens, that the selection for point seems to be going away. Now it's simply which nib size would you like? And I think that's fine, but there's something so quaint about the idea of a point. So I kind of miss that, and it's very nostalgic to read it here. Let's now open the door to some fascinating information on which ink color Ernest Hemingway liked to use. And this blew me away because I assumed that there were 3 ink colors before 1970. That was what I thought. Of course, blue, black, and red. Maybe you could mix blue and red, get purple, something like that. But there seems to be wider choices. Let's take a look. And the other thing that's really fascinating, by the way, is that this guy could write letters. I mean, he is banging out 10, 12 letters a day sometimes. Many days, he's really writing quite a few letters. It's very impressive. I should mention that he overwhelmingly used black ink. It was his preferred ink color, and almost everything he wrote was in black. Occasionally you see blue ink as well, and then there are even more rare occasions of some other colors. So this comes from the letters of Ernest Hemingway. This letter is dated the 19th of November, 1929. It's to Charles Thompson. It's handwritten, and it's all about him returning to America. It's a very nice letter, but that's not the important part. It's the commentary. We have one source for this, but it's a good source, and it's Christie's. So the footnote says, according to Christie's catalog, Ernest Hemingway wrote this 4-page letter in brown ink on tan paper, creased from folding, with 2 small holes, with loss of a few letters. So this letter is a little bit beat up, but the interesting part is it's written in brown ink. I mean, that's so fascinating. I tried to get an image of this letter, but it's covered under copyright as well. Christie's has it in their catalog, but they only have the description online for that very reason. But still, so interesting to me that he would use brown ink. I love brown ink. So, what other colors could he have possibly used? So here's another interesting bit of information. This letter is from the 9th of May, 1930, to his friend Waldo Pierce. And it says, Dear Waldo, have been going to write every damn day, but what, with so many merchants here, 2 trips to Tortugas, then cut my right forefinger and had 6 stitches, so I couldn't pound the machine nor grip the pen. So was he speaking figuratively about gripping the pen, taking up the pen, or was he being literal? And is this confirmation that he did use pens to write? Because from what we know of Ernest Hemingway's usual writing process, he preferred to write in the early morning standing up on paper, writing in longhand, which he then either typed into manuscript or had someone type, and then he would make notes and they would revise from there. But there have been manuscripts found that were written in pens. I mean, we all grab whatever's around us when we need to write something. So, but was this sort of proof that around 1930 he was using a pen to write? I guess I'll have to dig deeper, see if I can find some manuscripts from that time written in fountain pens that will confirm this and sort of close the loop. This is the kind of research I'm doing. I just find this stuff fascinating. I feel like it gives me a deeper understanding and appreciation for Hemingway. It also makes that older nostalgic world a bit more real to me. It grounds it, and I love the fact that I can get a hold of a Waterman fountain pen myself, kind of have that same experience and draw a direct connection to Ernest Hemingway, who would have used a similar pen. I just find all of this fascinating, and I really don't know where it will lead me next, not the least of which are other writers. There's other writers out there I'm so curious about. Tom Wolfe, I wonder which fountain pens he used. I'm really curious about that. I'd like to see what Tolkien used to write that sort of elfish language of his. I know he was fond of dip pens as well. There are so many different directions that I can take this, and I hope you'll come along with me for that journey. So if you've reached this point in the video, please subscribe. I'd love to have you with me as I uncover more and more interesting facts from the lives of our favorite writers. And if you want to support this channel even more, consider becoming a member. Helps keep the lights on, and there's a lot of fun behind the scenes, including a pen pal group for cognoscenti and Illuminati members. So we can write a bunch of letters just like Ernest Hemingway did. Why not? So I make new videos videos all the time, and I have a live show Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. So I can assure you we will see each other again very soon, further up the road. So take care of yourself and please stay inspired.